So I'm joined today with a number of amazing students who will be sharing some of their Oxford insights, and we'll hand over to them in a few moments where you can have an opportunity to ask them some questions, and we will also answer some pre-prepared questions as well. So I thought before we jump into that student panel, I just wanted to give you all a very quick oversight of what is our Africa initiative at Oxford Said, as well as the Africa Alliance. So you should all be able to see a wonderful photo on your screens. This photo was taken back in 2016 when we had the first 10% representation coming from Africa. And I think, these last 18 months have really reflected on us the need for great leadership, both within government and in business. I think, in fact, more and more we're really seeing the significant role that business plays in society, especially in addressing some of the most major challenges in the world. So that for us is where we step in. We really believe that the Oxford MBA plays a significant role in helping students develop both as responsible leaders, as well as assist them in navigating some of the rapid changes within the African markets. We all know how influential Africa is becoming on the global stage. We've seen stats and numbers, say like from the World Bank. I know that the World Bank has predicted by that 2035, the number of Africans at working age is projected to be larger than the combined working populations in all other regions. And so with that opportunity, there is also a particular range of economic and political and societal environments that create unique challenges for businesses, especially in Africa. And that is why our Africa initiative is so important. To provide us a bit more context, is that back actually in 2014, our former dean, Professor Peter Tufano, he made a pledge at the 2014 World Economic Forum in Abuja to have at least 10% of our MBA students coming from the African continent. To put that number into perspective, most international MBA programs on average only have about 2% of their class coming from Africa. Therefore, we really were making a substantial commitment to achieve that 10%. And as a community, a lot of people ask us why are we doing this? And we really believe that by having a significant number of African students, we are able, and they are able, to provide direct insights into a range of exciting emerging economies in Africa, as well as educate non-Africans on the opportunities on the continent. So, following that pledge, we became very purposeful in our recruitment to ensure that we could increase accessibility to a broad range of African prospects. We host a number of school-led information sessions, both in country and online. Obviously, pre-COVID, we were very frequently on the continent. And we also have a number of dedicated scholarships for students from Africa. And as this photo shows, we were very proud to actually achieve that 10% aim. And this year's class, who you will hear more from some of our students, this is our 5th year of having more than 10% of our class. 12% of our class this year is from Africa, from a broad range of different backgrounds, including different nationalities and sectors, and they can share a little bit more of those backgrounds. So to look more specifically at how the Africa initiative sort of has been embodied beyond that 10%, as I've already mentioned, we're very focused on diversity within nationality and gender, but we've also focused on developing African-focused content. We have a number of Africa-focused electives. We've developed some case studies, a number of focused events and content that is very specific to ensuring that a lot of our students that have the focus on Africa are able to apply perhaps global principles, but within an African context. And we're also looking at strengthening different opportunities in Africa for our students and alumni. It's very important. We do not want to be seen as an institution that takes phenomenal talent from the continent and doesn't support those opportunities to return. So as I mentioned, we have 12% of the class this year from Africa, and our Africa focus includes a number of different activities, and this is where the Africa Alliance plays a significant role. So the Oxford Africa Business Alliance essentially is a partnership between our students, alumni, faculty, and staff at the business school, and we all work collectively to drive this Africa initiative. And it's everything from hosting sessions like this to support more talented individuals looking to come do an MBA, through to the programmatic content, through to events. And we have a number of different, we have just next week, we have a number of events. Tonight after this, a number of our students are going off to an event around networking and building those relationships. And it also, though, focuses very much on how do we engage with corporates, whether it's corporates that are looking to hire some of our students, do internships, different projects. And so the Africa Alliance, I think, is a great sort of community that allows you to build really deep, meaningful relationships, but again, allows our African cohort to really influence the non-African students. So we're really trying to educate a very broad base and get people excited about the continent and the opportunities that exist. We also run through the Africa Alliance, we run our flagship event, which is the Africa Business Forum. It's in March of every year. So save the dates for the 11th and 12th of March next year. And every year we work on a theme that is what we feel almost something that's very critical to address. So the next year's theme is focusing on the youth of Africa and really exploring how it is both an opportunity as well as a challenge. And that's what I had mentioned earlier on the beginning of this. So we will be handing over to our students now. I'm staying on. If anybody has any specific questions that are very related to the admission side, we're happy to answer those. Please send through any questions that you have. If I can ask if you can use the Q&A function as opposed to the chat, and then we'll make sure that we answer those questions. So I invite all the students to turn on their cameras and their videos so everyone can see who you all are. This session specifically is head by our two co-heads of outreach. So Dide and Chima, they are co-heads, and their roles are very much around engaging, supporting, and identifying future candidates that would be great on the Oxford MBA program. So they're very committed to this, ensuring that everybody has both the opportunity and the access to exploring an Oxford MBA, just as many of our other students here. So I'd like to hand over to Dide and Chima to introduce yourselves and then take it away. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Tammy. So Akwaba, which in my local dialect means welcome. My name is Dede. I'm from Ghana, and prior to the MBA, I was working with Vodafone Ghana as the customer lifecycle manager. I have a little over 8 years of experience in the telecommunications industry, spanning the areas of product development, segment marketing, and customer value management. Post-MBA, my goal is to become an innovations manager, building strategies and action plans, and working with big tech companies. Thank you.
Thanks, Dede. Hi, everyone. I'm Chima from Nigeria. Before the MBA, I was the strategy and operations manager at M-Copper. Basically led several projects, handled payments. And before that, I did some consulting and then also worked in health tech and also e-commerce. Post MBA, I'm looking to still stay in tech and also in the same functional area, and possibly also delve into product management. So nice to meet you all. So I'll pass it on to Bart, so he can introduce himself.
Cool, thanks, Chima. Yeah, good afternoon or evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Bartek from South Africa. I'm actually back in South Africa now. I came home this weekend for one of my best friend's weddings. That's why I've got the Oxford background, because I already missed the place so much when it's been a couple of hours only. My background is quite a structured corporate one. I was at Deloitte for 7 years in the auditing and assurance space. And And more recently, for the past year or so, I've been involved in a corporate startup, also in the telecommunication space, really around trying to create jobs in South Africa. And we've created a tech platform called I Talk to You, which allows people to work as call center agents from home. We can go into more details on that, but yeah, post MBA plans are, I think I'm still trying to figure it out a lot. I've got a lot of ideas in my head and a lot of good direction as to where to go, but really I think the purpose of meeting the MBA is to figure it all out and be exposed to an amazing network, which will, allow me along this journey of success. Cool. I'll pass over to Rudolph since you're on the screen now.
All right. Hey, good evening, afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Rudolph. So prior to the MBA, I worked as a petroleum engineer. I've been doing that for like 9 years of my life. So coming to the MBA, I was actually looking to stay in the energy space, but also learn about strategy, commercial. And post MBA, I like to stay in the energy business. So I probably moved from being an engineer to more of an ops and strategy guy. Yeah. Welcome, and we look forward to having a nice conversation. So I'll pass on to Ife.
I knew it, by the way. I knew it end up on me, but it's fine. Hi, everyone. Good evening, or wherever you're tuning in from. But hi, guys. My name is Ife Olua. I'm Nigerian. I've had a 5-year work experience working as a lawyer in my home country, Nigeria. I started out my career working in the public sector in the office of Nigeria's vice president. Then I moved to the private sector to work with a leading law firm where I worked in finance and fintech, still as a lawyer. And then it was from there that I applied to come to Oxford Said. And here I am. Post MBA, I am actively looking towards pivoting to tech. I think a couple of us have said tech, so you guys want to check that out if you're interested. But I'm very excited about what's happening in the tech space. So actively looking to move to big tech and also still maintain my interest in fintech as well. But yeah, so that's me in a nutshell. I would pass it over to Ashraf.
Thank you, Ifog. Hello, everyone. My name is Ashraf Mizu. I am from Khartoum, Sudan. I have a background in electric and electronic engineering, and before coming to Said, I ran a small company called Naila. We developed prosthetic limbs for Sudanese amputees and connected them to occupational opportunities. My plan post MBA is to sort of explore roles in big tech and sort of further accelerate my company, so accelerate in the entrepreneurship sphere. I'm really excited for this conversation and excited to connect with whoever is interested one-on-one after the session.
Thank you, Ashraf. Thank you for that. So let's get the ball rolling. So Tammy spoke comprehensively about Oxford's MBA focus on Africa. I'll start with Chima. So Chima, how has the African representation had an impact on your Oxford MBA experience so far?
Thanks, Dede. I think it's been really great because before now, right? I just worked in West Africa and also some part of East Africa as well, right? So now being exposed to a host of other people from the continent has given me insight into how business is in their different regions and countries. Just like broadening my horizon, right, and increasing my knowledge about the continent, about how businesses happen in different areas. Just giving like different perspectives, right, into business problems, problem solving, and all of that. So it's been really great. And then apart from that, right, it just feels great to be in a place like Oxford with people from your continent, right? It just feels it feels better, having this much people from your continent. It just makes the learning process easier, So yeah.
Yeah, right. Rudolph, would you like to add to that?
Well, just as Chima said, what you realize is that when you try to learn new stuff, first of all, it's really good. me coming here, I'm actually learning things that I wasn't used to. Never done that because my whole career I've been working in the technical field. But you come here, you sort of learn the soft skills. Sometimes they say it's really good, but when they add context to it, when they structure it, when they realize that this is the steps for you to go through, it actually makes you more aware of your surroundings. And as Chima said, working on the continent, you realize that there's so much going on the continent, but if you know the avenue and the strategy for you to approach it, actually helps you in a way. And I can tell you the MBA will give you that skills to do that. So anybody considering it, I would say it's a good thing. It's good that you're actually thinking about that as the first step to take. And I'll push you and encourage you to go ahead with that.
Great, great. Thank you, Rudolph. Okay, so we're now going to some general tips around admissions. Bartek, so what do you feel are some of the biggest challenges to Africans applying to the Oxford program, Oxford MBA program?
Yeah, thanks. And I think it's probably a very important point for everyone on this call, or for all of us, that the thought process we went through. The mindset shift that I think most of us eventually got to, since we sit in on, we've been accepted on this side, is that the actual program, you need to start viewing it as an investment in yourself. And the way I see it is like, if you can invest in Bitcoin and property, but you can't invest in your own self, and you can't see this ROI of, whoever, Rudolph Pty Limited, or whoever it is in the future, and see the ROI that you're going to gain from your investment, that's kind of the mindset shift which you've got to start taking. So obviously funding is a big thing, and how to plan for it, and I'm sure we'll go into more details on that properly now. But that's the sort of shift that I started looking at, because I was saying, if I don't trust myself and back myself in the next X amount of years, then what am I doing? And that's really like the shift that I started believing in. So it's about investing in yourself, believing in yourself, and knowing that whatever sort of funding you have to take and get, you will be able to repay that, and repay it within good time. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges. And I think it's really just about that self-belief. If you are thinking about an MBA, and if you're looking into Oxford, you're ready, you're ready in the right steps. You've got to understand what Oxford offers you. You've got to understand why you want to go to Oxford specifically. From an African perspective, it's huge. And then once you've got to that point, it's really about persevering and actually getting into all the administration of GMATs and entrance exams and stuff, which I'm sure we can dive into, knowing that the ROI on your own investment will be huge going forward.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bart. Ashraf, so I'd like you to please touch on your application process, right? So basically, how did you go about that? And then what helpful tips do you have to share, right? People here.
Yeah, thank you, Chima. I guess one tangent to the last point Bart made is that the application for an MBA or any university is sort of a journey of introspection. So you need to know who you are, where you stand, sort of what your goals in life are, and to really try to convey that. And I think the application is very important. So I feel like it had sort of a reverse effect on me as well, is that while I am applying, or was applying, I learned a lot about who I was and what I want to do in life. So I think approaching the application sort of in that with that approach is very valuable. And I guess one of the best tips that I can give is that Oxford seems very intimidating as sort of the institution, but at least people here, the staff, people from the admissions, they're very human, and they really genuinely care. So I feel like one of the things that really helped me out was I actually just reached out to people from admissions and had conversations prior to the application, and they were very helpful. They gave me sort of the insider tips and tricks, and that was very helpful in my sort of application journey. So I say just reach out to whoever. I'm sure that if they have time, they will respond to your invitation to have a conversation. And it doesn't have to be long, but just make your presence known. And So yeah, make use of that for sure. Introspection journey. But I'll pass it back to you, Chima.
Can I just add to that from an admissions and recruitment point of view? And I think Bart and Ashraf, you've both hit the nail on the head. I think in terms of, we saw it wasn't as simple as us just admitting more African students. That was not the solution to this problem that many schools have. I think it was both very purposeful, and I think, Bart, you already mentioned about that self-assurance to even consider a program, and Ashraf, like you've already mentioned, that sort of perhaps stigma that Oxford has perhaps around accessibility. So I think, the challenges we really saw were candidates just not even having access to the GMAT or GRE. You could only do the GMAT in 14 African countries, for example. That eliminates 40 different nationals in terms of just being able to sit a test that is a requirement to get on the MBA program. And so being on the ground and ensuring that people have the opportunity to ask those questions, get the tips. So if anybody is interested, we do have an admissions and recruitment team that is very focused on that kind of engagement. We're happy to offer any one-to-ones and profile reviews and CV reviews to help support you through that sort of journey. And I think another big challenge we realized that, there isn't necessarily an MBA culture in Africa. If you look in parts of the US or Europe, there's people that, you could go and find maybe your boss, your uncle, your cousin, your brother, your father has gone and done some form of either an MBA or a postgraduate like that. And that's not often the case in Africa. So just even having mentors and that support to get advice is something that we realized is a gap. And that's where we feel we have a responsibility to ensure that, people do have support. We knew it wasn't a talent problem. We knew the talent existed. What we were focusing on is how do we get the talent to have the opportunity to consider applying and then obviously get funding. So I know we'll get to the funding piece in a bit, but obviously scholarships was a key component of what we did as well. So yeah, back over to you, Chima. Or Didi, sorry.
All right. Thanks, Tammy, for that. So like you said, we'll now go into the funding, questions around funding. So Ife, how did you go about funding your MBA? And could you touch upon the different funding options out there?
I was like, she should ask someone else's funding question, but she had to come to me. Honestly, guys, a big part of the MBA itself, obviously, is how are you going to fund this exciting degree? And I'm glad that I'm in the midst of my people, Africans, right? So we don't need to lie to ourselves. We know that if you're working for yourself, if you're working for a company, more often than not, you're not making enough to be able to fund a degree like this, right? But I want you to take comfort in the fact that the 5 of us are here, and there are about 44, 45 of us on the MBA program at the moment. And so it's very possible you can make it here. The money will come, if you are really willing to, do everything it takes, everything legal and legit, by the way. So in terms of how I funded mine, so I had a couple of streams, right? First of all, scholarships were a big way for me. So all through my Oxford MBA application, I made sure that I reflected everything that I had done, with women, for women, in line with women's support. I don't know that if anybody in admissions picked up my Oxford MBA application, you would tell that, oh, she's a very big, women advocate. And I was doing that because it was true. And additionally, I was aiming for certain women-based scholarships at Oxford. And so it was very exciting for me to get the Laidlaw Scholarship, which is really the first time that, that scholarship was being awarded to Oxford MBAs, right? And so, yeah, that's one. So be strategic. There's a lot of research that goes into scholarship applications because you want to make sure that you're tailored towards the kind of scholarships that you're applying for, and your application is speaking to that, right? That's one. So scholarships are a big deal, and I know that we're going to talk about that a bit more. I should tell you for free that Oxford is one of the institutions in the world that offers a lot of funding support to Africans, and so you want to definitely take advantage of that. Personal savings as well. You also want to be mindful that the MBA process by itself, it's quite an expensive one. I'm not going to lie. If you're taking the GMAT, GRE, there's a cost attached to that. If you're like me, who was coming from a non-quantitative background, you might need to take classes. There's a cost attached to that. Even getting here itself, applying for a visa, this and that, you do spend your personal funds, right? And so you want to, obviously gauge your pocket. If the money is not going to come from you, do have people around you who are going to support. I did a bit of sort of like in-house raising. I wasn't going to, do like a GoFundMe public crowdfunding because I just didn't want to. But over the course of my life, I had people who I had met, who I had learned from, who I had worked with, interned with, that I knew really valued my progress and were more than happy to support me. So when my admission letter came in, oh my God, I was sharing it around like, guys, thank you for the congratulations, but we need to apply for a visa. And I was amazed by the enormous support that I got, and I'm so thankful for it because, honestly, I couldn't have done without it. So I would say personal savings, scholarships. I think the last thing I would say is also be open to taking out some loans. Again, how much do you want this opportunity? I know a lot of my classmates who had to take out bit of a loan to cover part of my living costs as well. So again, how much do you want it? You cannot have an Oxford MBA admission letter in your hand and decide to just put it aside, right? Don't let money be the factor that doesn't let you get what you want. So different options, just be very open.
Great, Ife. A lot of what you said resonates very strongly with me because at the end of the day, it's a self-investment, right? And so yes, there are lots of scholarships that Oxford offers to African candidates. In fact, our current cohort, 60% of the current African students are on one form of scholarship. So that's a great thing. We also have external funding options like Prodigy. And yes, like you said, it's an investment, and it's an investment worthwhile. So thank you for that, Ife.
Can I make a quick point? I think just looking at tuition fees, it might be a bit discouraging, but I just want to encourage everyone to focus on getting here, focus on getting an admission. There are many funding opportunities, either the ones that you can actually research and apply to directly, or you have many people who did not apply for certain scholarships and ended up getting scholarships because that's how it works internally. So I think your primary focus at the moment should be to sort of tailor your application, really work hard on it and get an acceptance, and then start thinking about the scholarships.
Yeah, thanks,
Can I
Ashraf.
just quickly add to what Ashraf said, right? What he said really, really resonates here because when I decided to pursue an MBA, to be honest, I wasn't even thinking about the money, right? I just thought that the money will come, and eventually that's what happened. So I'd advise like focus on your application, right? Not just the GRE or the GMAT, everything, right? Just that should be your sole focus for now, right? So once that's done, and then you can now start, thinking about what, funding sources for you to get. So just take it one step at a time, basically.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think the next question, I would want to direct that to Rudolph. So Rudolph, basically, I want you to touch on what, based on your experience, right, in Oxford so far, what stands out for you, really, yeah? And then what other schools were you exploring, and then why did you decide to pick Oxford? And then so far in the program, right? So what's the key thing that has that's the most impactful to you so far?
All right, so I'll take the school part first. So I actually considered Cambridge and ANCR. And what I did was that I was going to rank them. So I know the schools, they do stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. So I went with Oxford first. And the thing is that, so after Oxford, so I went for Oxford round 2. And the idea was that after Oxford round 2, I was going to do Cambridge in round 3, and INSEAD, I'll go for the January application, because that would have been later down the road. But then when I got the Oxford application, to be honest, I didn't follow up with the rest, and I had to send them an email that I'm going to Oxford, because I do know where Oxford starts when you come to in Africa. And in the world, it's either you go to Oxford or you go to the other schools. So yes, that was no brainer for me. Coming to Oxford, what stands out for me is the diversity part. I know we use the word a lot, but I will tell you that we have 71 nationalities in one class. So what you realize is that I have other 70 countries that I can actually go to and know people from my class. And not just from the MBA when it comes to Oxford, but a bigger Oxford community, because we have the college system. You get to meet all sorts of people around, very smart people from different backgrounds you get to learn from, and you actually make friends for life. So you not only learn just what you're learning in the classroom in terms of business, but you're also learning and meeting people from the medical. I've met people who are working on stroke, who are working on trying to find cure for Parkinson's disease. I've met like neuroscientists who are doing extraordinary research. And hey, I've got the chance to even meet the people who actually created the AstraZeneca vaccine. And these are the things you get from Oxford. You meet people that will impact your life. You meet people that will challenge you and help you to aim higher. You meet classmates who are doing wonderful things, and you realize, oh, wow, these are the kind of people I'm working with. And that's the thing. So it's not just about what we learn from the classroom. I mean, to be honest, there are so many things you can go Google online and you find out. But how the discussions in the class, the richness of whatever people discuss in the class, that's what Oxford brings. So you're getting perspective from different continents, different sectors, different background, different personal stories. And that shapes out your thinking, that shapes out what you are saying. And one thing I'll tell you guys, when you come to Oxford, you probably have an idea where you want to go, but you come to Oxford, it changes, your orientation changes. There are so many options where you want to go. So yeah, that's the diversity part and the people I'm meeting is what I would say is the biggest impact for me right now.
Thanks,
Great,
Rudolph.
thank you, Rudolph. So like you're saying, our class is extremely diverse. We have the current cohort is 64% international. I honestly do not know of a more diverse MBA program out there. So thank you so much, Rudolph, for that. So now, Bartek, still on the Oxford tangent, what are the two core themes or areas you feel the business school focuses on? And why do you feel they are important areas to focus on? So that's one. I have two questions for you. And the second is, so Bartek, why an international MBA versus a local MBA?
Yeah, right. I think I might answer that the second point first.
Okay.
Probably adds a little bit on, on what was said, but just to reiterate that, I guess I'd never been to Oxford before. It was always, a dream place. And I think no one can put into words that feeling that all of us had when you first walk by some of these buildings in the background, and you actually realize that, wow, this is where I'm studying, in the corridors that the world's greatest minds, and like pretty much all the greatest minds in the world have had some sort of, link to Oxford. So for me, it was really about the brand and the network of Oxford and the international, networking, and that's why I decided to do an international MBA as opposed to a local one. I think I wanted to shift my mindset from, more of a South Africa focused mindset to how do I become a global leader and bring in global practices back into South Africa. That was the biggest shift for me. So that was the second question. Your first question, you asked about the two most important things that the schools,
two areas you feel are focus areas for the business school, and why you think these areas are important to the business school and to us.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to define it in two. I guess if I do think of like some of the underlying themes that really resonate throughout the past 6 or 7 weeks of lectures and courses, the one main theme is like profit versus purpose, and we're all moving towards this, sustainable world and taking the shift away from short-term profitability into really like getting our collaborative minds together to be world leaders and actually work together to have a sustainable world and sustainable business. And I think the second biggest thing is really it challenges us to think critically and not you know, most of us came here, and I certainly did, to be pushed out of my comfort zone. And I like those conversations where you feel out of your depth. And I enjoy being pushed out of my comfort zone with people that, you know, are learning new cultures or learning new ways of thinking, or learning about some, you know, fintech business that's taken off amazingly, and you like, just how did they get this right, or some sustainable efforts that people have put together, and just admiring their sort of courage. So it's really about that thinking critically part, which for me, I probably never knew what it meant, and it came up in my essays a lot. You know, I want to think critically, and what does that actually mean? But to be here, and over the past 8 weeks, which feels like a lifetime, the amount of knowledge that we've gained in 8 weeks, it's made me think completely, you know, in a different dimension and in a global mindset. Hopefully that covers that point.
Yeah, thanks, Bartek. Just a quick correction from my side. Our class is 94% international. Oh, I guess I made a mistake. 94%. Yeah. So, Chima.
Thanks, Dede. So, my next question is for you. Just as a follow-up to the diversity, right, of our class, how would you describe the type of people that come here to school, basically? So, you've interacted with several people, right? So what's that? How do you describe the typical Oxford MBA person, or candidate rather?
Oh wow, that's an exciting one to actually think about, because it's people that have done different exciting things. I remember even before we got here, we have a Telegram group with everyone. And one of our classmates was like competing in the Olympics. I'm like, oh my God, you know, I was still in Nigeria, and I was telling my family, like, wow, you know, does that mean I have the guts to also go to the Olympics? Like, you just feel like, you know, it's such a rich class with people from different backgrounds. And I think that's like the most exciting thing about it. So I've met different kinds of people. I've met people who, you know, are well off in their careers, right? And have done different things. I've met people who are, you know, I mean, not very young in their careers, but probably like mid-level. So it's just a bunch of experiences, people from different sectors. You know, like I said, I'm a lawyer, there are people from tech, there are people from healthcare, there are people from engineering, there are people from the social impact space, and every single person has amazing views, amazing opinions. When we're all in class and people are sharing their experiences, you know, it's not theory, right? It's actual experiences that people have been involved in. We just finished a course called Global Rules of the Game, that talks about the intersection between politics and business, you know, and just the true realities. When we're all sharing experiences in class, I'm like, oh, wow. You know, I mean, from Nigeria, from India, from Mexico, from South Africa, from the US, like people are just, you can tell that people, you know, have seen a lot of experiences, and, you know, everyone is just always happy to share. And I think that that is one of the big strengths of the Oxford MBA. The diversity is real. It is not on paper. It is not just in those brochures. It is real. You know, you come here and you feel like you're in the midst of, you know, I mean, a conference that has people from all over the world that are like 355 people, and you just feel like you're thrown into some, you know, some exciting world where anything is possible, right? So the diversity for me, I would say the diversity at Oxford is real, you know, not just paper.
Thanks, Afa. Thanks. Okay, so next question real quick. This is to Rudolph. So far, right, let's talk about the MBA and its content, right? So what is different about the experience for you so far? And just briefly describe or touch on what a typical day is in the life of an Oxford MBA.
All right, so I'll start with a typical day. So today, I mean, from Tuesday up to today, I think today is the first day I closed early. Tuesday I closed at 7:30. Wednesday I closed at 7:30, and today I got to close at 5, which is good for me. On a typical day, you realize that you have early morning in class, then you have support classes online, then you have deep dive, which is also another support class online. Then you go to class, then you have group meetings, you have extra curriculum. So the day is really packed. So when people talk about time management, they actually mean it, because when you have an hour to spare, then it's a luxury hour, because there's always something that you have to do, bro. The readings are packed, the team meetings are packed, but you're all learning new things. So that's the typical way in the MBA. You're always busy and learning new things. And when it comes to the content, well, what I realize is you have the materials, but the difference is the experience everybody brings to class. So before you come to class, everybody reads it. Basically, you probably have heard about the problem before. It's something that we go through. Our assessment was based on the yogurt company. That was the first time as an engineer going to read about all these yogurt companies. I actually realized that that company had even invested in my country. I didn't even know about that. But these are the things you get to learn from the MBA. You go deeper, then you actually see what's happening, and the experience people share. So now you realize that your thinking becomes different. So we had a case on Zara. And when we had that case, the first thing I wanted to do was look at Zara's financial to see how the COVID had impacted them, how supply chain has impacted them. And these were not things I was doing before the MBA. Before the MBA, when I look at a company, I was like, oh, they're doing well. Oh, energy company, oh, they're making money. But then now, when I see a company, when I think about a company, I'm looking at what are their issues, what are their problems, what are the underlying factors. And you realize that there's a trend that goes through, and these things, the MBA helps you to appreciate these things even much better. So you may have heard about it, you may have known it, but the MBA is teaching you the right way to apply these tools. And that's the difference between the MBA. And what the Oxford MBA brings is the prestige about how different people are sharing it. So like if you say, you have different people in different sectors sharing their experience. So you have the same scenario, but from different categories, different countries, different continents. So the same table, we are actually seeing it from different perspectives. And that actually enriches the argument that we have in class. So yeah, the typical day is packed, but whatever you learn within that day is so rich.
Great.
Thanks, Rudolph.
Thanks, Rudolph. So Ashraf, regarding being an entrepreneur and starting your own business, what has been the value add of the MBA to your business? What kind of skills and qualities have you developed so far whilst on the MBA program?
Well, that's a very heavy question. You took me off guard. I feel like there's still a lot to learn. This is our 7th week or 6th week still.
Yeah.
But we're currently dealing with a very big crisis in Sudan. There was a military coup a few weeks ago in Sudan that sort of undermined our partnerships with the Sudanese government. And we're currently running sort of a contingency crisis management plan. And one of the things that we're doing that we already had planned before is like to relocate to Kenya. So one of the things that are really helpful and fruitful are conversations with people either who have started companies in Kenya or in East Africa in general, trying to see who in their networks and who they know can help us out, like relocating or conducting an initial sort of market research or market survey in Kenya. So this is what's happening these days. But otherwise, I think it's the technical skills that you, as an entrepreneur, you have to sort of self-learn everything. And it's very contrasting to having sort of a corporate experience or working under very strict sort of organizational structures, is that you're always learning on the go, and there's a very steep learning curve. So I think one of the key sort of benefits of the MBA is that it gives you sort of the technical knowledge of sort of on a silver plate. Now I know how to do basic financial modeling. My knowledge of accounting, for example, has grown exponentially, and I'm able to have these sort of conversations. It also gives you language, so the things that you have been doing as an entrepreneur intuitively, now you have sort of a language to be able to think about them more in a more structured way. So I think all of these sort of formal, technical, curriculum-based, but also informal, personal sort of outcomes of the MBA so far has been tremendous in my experience.
Awesome, awesome.
Great. So should we take some questions from the audience? Because I think we have a long list of them, and I'll fire off to you guys and you can all answer them. I think there's a great question here, which we have the sort of perfect person to speak on it. Somebody's asking, can any of the ladies speak on the women's diversity, equality and inclusion at Oxford? And do students have platforms, or does Oxford have a particular forum to push DEI or EDI, I suppose? So Ife, I think that would be a great question for you to answer, given that you are the co-chair of the Women's Alliance. So just as a quick thing, the school has 2 alliances, an Africa Alliance and a Women's Alliance. Those are 2 key areas of focus. So over to you, Ife, for that question.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I like to say, nothing here is just paper, it's all real. I believe, in time, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe currently the class has 44% women,
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken, yeah.
Correct.
I mean, if you run the numbers, I don't even find any business school that's doing that. You know, I know there's one, but this is the first year they're hitting the parity mark. Let's see if they can keep up. But if you look at the numbers at Oxford, right, it's consistent. When we say women are important, it's not a joke. Women are actually important. Yeah, like Tammy said, I'm the co-chair of the Women's Alliance. And there's so much going on in terms of diversity, in terms of the discussions. And I think one exciting thing for me is to also see that even men, you know, are part of the Women's Alliance. And I'm like, oh, wow, you know. So, I mean, I always say you don't need to have women's conversations just with women. You know, I mean, everyone should be a part of this conversation. And you get to find that even the guys in Oxford are always excited to be a part of these conversations. So it's very driving a lot of initiatives around that. I mean, International Men's Day is this month, and we're collaborating with the guys at Oxford to have a conversation on the 30th to discuss mental health in the workplace. And that is even in men's events, but they're happy to collaborate with the Women's Alliance to have those important discussions. So like I said, it's not a joke. It's not stuff that you just read about. It is real, and we're all experiencing it. And it's great to be in an environment where these conversations are actively happening and actions are actually being, you know, backed up by these conversations.
Absolutely. And I definitely think our diversity and inclusion goes even beyond women. And I think that's a critical component for us. Do we need to do more and do better? Absolutely. But, you know, there is a key focus for that. We have obviously within the Student Council an EDI officer. So that is something that is a key focus for us. So this is a question that most probably everybody could sort of contribute to. But, you know, the big question of the day is obviously COVID and how it's impacted physical interactions between students, I suppose, and on campus. And somebody's also asking, are classes online, hybrid, or class-based? Is there now a greater sense of a return to normalcy? So Didi, I don't know if you want to sort of give your COVID experience at the moment, like how much it is impacting the class, and I can give the official line if that's helpful, but yeah, let's hear your experience.
So far, it's been an amazing experience. We've been having a lot of in-person classes, but then what the school has done is the school has leveraged on the learnings from the COVID, the whole pandemic, right? And so now we have what we call asynchronous classes, where before we come for the in-person class, we have reading materials that we go through, so that in class the discussions are richer, the discussions are more focused because we've done most of our reading. So we actually leveraging on the remote way of work, of studying, which was the norm last year. But so far, everything has been in person and we've been loving it. But then the great thing is, if you can't join, you could still just Zoom into the sessions. So that has been amazing, especially for me as a mom on the program. Sometimes things happen, right? And so I have to join remotely. So it's been a win-win for us. Yeah.
Great. And I think, yeah, you've summarized that in terms of us needing to have something that's quite fluid and reactive to whatever the current circumstances. So it's something that we constantly monitor as well, and are quite adaptable to.
Just to add, that the school is also very big on safety, right?
Yeah.
So regularly, we're always encouraged to do COVID tests. at the reception, you can pick up your lateral flow test. And we're all testing all the time just to make sure that we're able to continue in-person classes, but people are safe. And I think that's a great thing that Oxford Said is doing that, that is helpful in these times.
Absolutely. So we have another question about colleges, and we didn't really talk too much about colleges in terms of what is a college, but they're asking what colleges are you all in. We don't need to go through all the colleges because they're all great and you'll all start picking the colleges that are better. But maybe Rudolph, if you chat about your college experience, and was it your first choice?
All right. Okay. So my college wasn't my first choice, but I love it. I'm in Green Templeton College. And what happens with the college is that I know in Africa, we have the high schools where everybody has their hall or their dormitory. So that's how the college is. And what it does is that when you go to your college, you are meeting people from different departments in that college. And I actually hang out in my college from every weekend, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Because during the week, I'm meeting from the business school. But the bigger Oxford community has a lot more to also offer. So over the weekend, I go there and I get to meet people from different departments, government, lawyers, doctors, physics. I met people doing somebody doing research in nuclear, trying to disprove if neutrons is a mass or not. I mean, these are fascinating things. So yeah, the college actually helps because you get to meet different people, and that's like your family in Oxford. So I see the business school as my school, my department, and I see the college as my home, because when you go there, it's not just about the people you meet in the classroom, but you're meeting people from different backgrounds, different countries, and it's even more diverse in the college. So yeah, and they're all amazing colleges that we have the best food on campus on Oxford. So
Amazing. Yeah, and everybody belongs to a college, as it is. So when you become an MBA student or any graduate or postgraduate student, you belong to a college, and your college is essentially your pastoral care in a way. So it's where you can choose to like live and eat and sleep, or it's more of sort of your connection to the wider university and people studying completely different disciplines to the MBA. So Bart, there's a question here on the job search process, and I know you said at the beginning of this you weren't quite sure where you're going to go, what you're going to do. So somebody's trying to ask, is the job search process structured through the careers department, or are students expected to search for opportunities independently? I don't know if you want to give some insight into the careers team. I mean, you've only been here for a short while, but in general.
Yeah, sure. I think there's a lot that careers team offers. So for example, there's a dedicated platform which you'll all come to learn when you join Oxford, that has a very structured way of upcoming events, whether it's in consulting, finance, entertainment, whatever industry you're looking for, one-on-one coffee chats, information sessions, application deadlines. And I guess the sooner you start becoming familiar with the program, the better. There's nothing you need to do beforehand. I guess we still, as Tammy said, we're still 8 weeks in, so relatively new. Some people have already found jobs and have already committed, found committed jobs at the end of the MBA. Some people only find jobs right at the end. It's really up to you and your sort of career journey and your career path. Sorry, did someone say something? I think, yeah, so I think in a way it is very structured. There is a lot of opportunity, and I guess whatever you're looking for, you'll find it. I think that sums it up quite nicely, because there's a lot that you can choose from.
Absolutely. Great. So Kofu asked 3 really great questions. I might not give them to everybody, even though you're saying everyone, but maybe Ashraf, there's a great question here on how did you answer the why you question in your application? So it's not a literal question in the application, but essentially that's the essence of an application. Why should Oxford consider you? So what was your story in the MBA? How did you portray that?
What question was that?
Yeah, it's not a physical question. I think it's the essence of the question is why should Oxford consider you? How did you answer that throughout your application, essentially?
I guess I had a very, very cliche but very sincere answer, and I think that is the essence of Oxford, is that sort of uniqueness and individuality. I think I answered it in sort of the lines of, I will bring my heart and soul to the program. I have a very, in my perspective, a unique experience operating a tech hardware sort of company in Sudan, in an infrastructure like Sudan, but also connecting on a very deep level with our consumers. So I think my application was in the lines of being locally rooted and globally perceptive, and being sort of having a very sincere, genuine impact in Sudan while still being relevant and competitive globally. And I think that's how sort of I themed my application. And there was one part of the application where it asked you, is there anything else that you want to talk about that you have not covered in your application? And as I've heard, some people say no. I don't think a lot of them are in the current MBA program. Yeah, so it's only a 250-word essay, and I think that's when you really get to be you. I started off my essay with a joke, really, and I think that just speaks to the informality of a lot of what's happening at Oxford MBA admissions, is that there is no clear structure. Like if said earlier, we have Olympians, we have people coming from family businesses, we have people coming from the military, we have entrepreneurs, we have people coming from a theater background. There is no one mold for sort of an Oxford MBA. So I think celebrating you, who you are, and your uniqueness is very important in the application process.
Absolutely.
And you shouldn't shy away from it.
Absolutely. And I think, Chima, there's a question here that somebody, again, Kofa was saying, what is the biggest lesson that has impacted you since the start of the program? And I think everyone forgets that it's not just about learning a lot of technical skills and even building a lot of networks. What do you feel you've sort of taken away from this moment in terms of some of the lessons that you could have learned from this experience?
I think one key thing is just humility, right? Just being humble, because you come in here and you meet, awesome people, like really smart people. Like coming here thinking you've done so much, but you maybe we who have done 10 times what you've done, so it just keeps you grounded, just realize how big the world is, and then how much you can learn from your peers, from your professors and your peers. So just being humble and just taking everything in, so I think that's the key thing for me. Yeah,
absolutely. And then on the flip side is also most probably recognizing that everybody is doing something amazing. I think,
correct.
It's when you sit and have college dinners and you talk about, I don't know, astrophysics with somebody sitting next to you, you might know nothing about astrophysics, but I guarantee you that they maybe know very little about things in Africa. So I think it's just being relatable to what you bring to the table as much as what everybody else brings to the table. There was a question here again from Kofi that was about what is the most memorable application you've reviewed and why? That was to me. And I think it's a great way to sort of end, because I've reviewed a lot of applications, so there's not just one memorable one, but I think, picking up even what Ashraf had said, like, I remember stories and I remember narratives. So when an application makes sense, when from the essay to the careers portion, to the interview, to the video assessments, you get to know this person, as opposed to just feel like you're hearing a lot of great things all over the place just to sort of impress us. So sort of pick your story, own your story, and just say that in your application. It's not about trying to tell us that you've done absolutely everything. And my biggest tip is most probably don't come across like you are perfect, because then what's the point of coming to do an MBA if you know everything or if you're this expert? So being flawed and admitting your strengths and weaknesses is exactly what we're looking for and what we hope to get out of the MBA. So I think it would be great to hear from everybody as I closing, what sort of in a sentence or two, what is sort of the advice or motivation that you'd give to anybody that is about to take the next step and perhaps apply this year or the next. So let's start. Bart, do you have any words of advice or encouragement?
Sure. I think it's hard to sum up in a short space of time, but I guess it's just believing in yourself. I mean, there is going to be that thing called imposter syndrome that you alluded to earlier, that you're looking around and everyone has such an amazing story, and a lot of people are going to have the same thoughts, like, wow, did they make a mistake in my application because I don't have such, this amazing thing. But it's believing in your story, believing in yourself, knowing that you can actually get to that, you know, you're in Oxford. Once you get into Oxford, you're there for a reason, and you're there to shape the world. So that would be my closing remark.
Absolutely. And Rudolph?
Yeah, so I'll just touch on what Bart said. Yeah, believe in yourself, go for it. Don't be scared, take the test. Oxford wants you know you're going to make impact. I mean, oftentimes we downplay the things we've done and we think that our experiences are not good enough. And we are all unique in our ways. So don't worry about what you're thinking. Just focus on your application. Be true to yourself, as Ashraf said. And you are unique. Write what you've done on your application. Let other people review it. Contact people in Oxford, LinkedIn, alumni. Let them review it. Come together, put up a story, sell yourself. And yeah, you're going to get in, and we'll be very happy to have you next time you're on call. And you keep telling us you just got your admission. So that's something we actually look forward to.
Amazing. And Ife?
I would say put your best foot forward. Don't do anything half-heartedly. Don't, honestly, I'm going to be honest, no sugarcoating here. The opportunity really comes to those who are prepared. So you know that there's a place for your preparation. Put your best foot forward. And I'm telling you that you deserve to be here. So if you do what you need to do, you can get a slot here. All the very best, guys.
Preparation is key. Absolutely. Ashraf, any final words of encouragement?
Yeah, I'm going to take the real estate to actually give some practical advice. Apply by stage 3 deadline, because that's when most of the scholarships are, that's when you're, what's the word I'm looking for? You're considered for most scholarships. One of the questions about GMAT, speak to admissions. In exceptional situations, you can get a waiver or you can get a conditional reviewing. I personally did not take the GMAT because I had an exceptional case, so talk to admissions. And like Tammy said, do your research, prepare. It's not be you, but also know what Oxford is about, know maybe what they are trying to look for, and don't just take a wild shot and a wild guess at what they're looking for. So that's it.
Great, thank you. And Dide and Chima, it would be great if you said the closings and any advice you want to give. And thank you both so much for organizing this, and all to the students as well. So Dide and Chima, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tammy. My words of advice, don't disqualify yourself, believe in yourself, and trust the process. So just apply. Chima?
I mean, just one major thing or two key things, right? So as you write that why you statement, just try as much as you can to be yourself, right? I mean, everybody else is already taken, so just be yourself, reflect, and just write your own personal story, right? And then, like Dede said, don't self-disqualify yourself. If we can be here, you can as well. So please apply. And feel free to reach out to all of us here. I mean, connect and just, reach out. Thank you.
And I've had a few connection requests. Simple tip, and I like that one out of the couple of requests I've gotten did that. When you want to add people, please send a note as well. Oh, hi, we met at the Oxford MBA session. I mean, it just makes the conversation easier. But yeah, thanks to everyone who's connected with me already. I did, you guys.
Great. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much to the panelists and to everyone who was able to join the session. It was a very engaging and interactive session, and all the best, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck.
Bye, guys. All the best.